All right, let's get started. Hold on one second. Oh, it's getting good. Let's see if I can get Rob Glenn to join us in a moment. Hopefully it's all good. Oh, yes. What's happening, people? Hold on one second. Look at this. Oh, that's not good. I forgot I had a light there. Why is this? This is a red light. Why would it be disappearing? I don't understand that at all. Like if a green screen, how much color am I? Look at this. Why would this be? Oh, maybe it's the amount of light. Maybe that's what it is. Very weird. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's Hal Sparks Mornings Megaworldwide. It's Friday. I just did, sorry I'm an hour late because I just did Dean Obadala show. It'll air later on today. And I felt like it got accidentally contentious. Apparently, and this is an ongoing thing I'm certain that I will be, getting in trouble for over time, is that I'm not adequately following the language of the talking points, even if ethically, morally, and courageously I'm fighting for the actual things. If I don't use the laggy bit, Instagram, YouTube is excellent. And I'm waiting for Rob Glenn to show up. He should be here any moment, just making sure he has the right link and all that kind of stuff. Should be okay, but I'll send it to Andrea again just in case he needs it again. There you go. I love Dean. What did you do? Nothing. No, I mean, I think it's more like his guess, because I think what they went into the kind of thing about like the justice system does not work because Trump, because of Trump's sentencing today. He kept his conviction, but he wasn't given time or whatever. Well, he can't be because he's about to serve as president of the United States. There is no circumstance where that happens. Just not. It just does. It's not going to happen. It's silly. And again, I've talked about this with the 14th Amendment shit, which is if one state could do it, any state could do it. And that's the end of like the political future of people, is they'll find some way to convict people that they don't like or that are on the edge or the margins of things in their state and guarantee that they can't run for office and da da da. It's like it's just a quagmire. We have to let, we have to fight on the ground that's in front of us, not on some fantasy, Marvel Secret Wars kind of version of reality, universe number 465, where, everything's upside down. It does, this is just where we are. And so the idea that he was going to serve time and be president from jail or something was just never going to happen in a million years. So let it slide and let him fail on his merits, and we will have plenty to push back on and let him, because again, any excuse to make him a victim on his side, they will take it. I had fun on Dean's show. I always do. But there's this, and I think Dean's a lawyer, right? And I think everybody knows this. That's my problem with it, I think, is the argument, I agree, Moon Girl, but we're not going to do it by sheer force of like squinting and pretending it's right side up. Does that make sense? She's saying, but yes, everything is upside down. We need to get back the right way around. Totally agree. Absolutely. And by the way, I'll bring in the chat room until we get Robin here. But for me, you don't like try to, by sheer force of will, wish it to turn right side up. You have to, you're like, oh shit, stuff's upside down. Let's fix this. There he is. He's in the background and I see him. Rob Glenn, thinking, wondering. Can you hear me? That's the question. Can you hear me, Rob?
I can, but is my audio coming through?
Yes, it is now. Yeah, I hear you. And I can see you. All good. So let me throw you in here and I'll switch my guest names and all that kind of stuff and get you in and we'll talk about this. Yep, you sound good.
I switched my microphone.
Fabulous. And thanks for accommodating for me there, because I, having to move stuff around for these fancy pants people that want to have me on their show. Right yes, we are. I'm live-ish. So let me bring you in here and I'll copy the link and I'll pop you in here and then we'll get to talking, because there's a lot to talk about. Rob Glenn, I will say, of all the people that's on the show, I would like to say for the record, you are the only one who has his own... there you are. And welcome. How are you? There you are.
Hi.
Live. And,
sorry, I'm totally catching up still.
No, I totally understand. So you are the only person who's a guest on the show who has their own browser source name. So your own entry into what brings your camera on has your name on it, as opposed to just guest 1, guest 2, even on the ones that I regularly use. You have your very own.
That must mean I'm special.
Yes, it is. It's a place of hallowed honor, and also speaks to the complexity. TSA Friday reminder. What am I doing there? Do I have to re-sign up for TSA? I don't understand. But anyways, I was just discussing, by the way, and I'm sure you'll have a bit to say about this as well, is that, like Trump, his conviction being kept, but him not serving jail time is the best outcome you could actually hope for in the circumstance where the Supreme Court has, said that basically you can't throw a president in jail. No state has that power over anybody who's been elected president. Oh my God, just think of all the monkey wrenches that would throw into electoral politics, period, forever and ever. Every Ken Paxton in the country would be like looking down the, pulling every Democratic activist who goes through Texas for some event. Shit, they probably have they could literally foment a Turn Texas Blue Purple event or whatever in Dallas. Invite all the Democratic hopefuls for the next 2 generations down there to speak at this big Talking Points USA kind of event, and then charge them all with a minor felony, a low level, or a stack of small misdemeanors that they regard as a felony within the state. Everybody could fight it, but it would just be cut and dry, a little bit of law. They would just go, well, I'm not going back to Texas anytime soon. Forget about it, kind of. And then they can't run for office later. Like, you know what I mean? Like, totally. That's all it would take. That's all it would take. It's absurd. All right,
so I'm jumping in. So you're talking politics. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I was just kind of like, so there's this weird thing where I have to do stuff in the exact right order.
Yes.
Or else it doesn't work. So I was literally like hitting it like a jukebox or a jack.
Yeah. I know it well. I have to open my audio router thing before I open OBS. And if I don't, I have to shut both of them down. And if one of them goes out, I have to close both of them to open them in the right order. Yeah, totally.
So I'm behind on the news, but so what you just said, yeah, like going into this, I thought the same thing. Like, yeah, of course, like he's a convicted felon. Keep it. Don't put him in jail, and yeah, he can be president. That's perfect. That's how it should work, probably.
Yep.
But oh my gosh, like just as a sort of a side note, like you've been kind of killing it this week in terms of the stuff you've been talking about and this, like the way you're coming at these subjects and stuff. I'm not going to do it now because this is AI, but when we have our next sort of behind the scenes meeting, I've got a couple theories and theses that I would like to share with you because, by the way, you called it sundial the other day. I've been making a graphic that shows left, right, center, like as effectively a clock. And I'll share that with you because I think there's like a really great way to redefine left and right. I think we have to redefine left and right. I've heard Tony Michaels basically say up and down or rich and poor. But at any rate, like redefining that. But we're really like at the top of the sundial, using your metaphor, the far left and the far right. I don't know if I'm on the computer, but you like everybody's just talking about the little tipping point in between. And it feels like, over the last week or two or month, like we originally started talking about AI as being, I've always referred to it as a tipping point. Like it was kind of always there. Machine learning and like all the stuff it's doing, it's been happening for a long time. And the thing that tipped it and made it feel like it was huge progress was that one thing that the LLM did, which is you communicate with it verbally, effectively, like with words. And it understands meaning and it gives it back to you with a meaning that connects, that's what's the most amazing part about it. So, but what I'm trying to say is just like the LLM made it seem like we had advanced almost overnight, very quickly. That was the tipping point.
Yes.
Almost all of politics seems to be right at this tipping point. And I would argue that as a couple of examples, like I don't think it's out of the question to convince Trump to support Ukraine. I think there's like an easy way to get him there.
Yeah.
There's an easy way to turn Joe Rogan into a Democrat. Like,
they're so close on so many weird things.
Right on the edge.
The debt ceiling thing alone is a great example of that, right? I mean, it is stunning to me how Trump jumped in on this get rid of the debt ceiling thing with both feet, which is a talking point that only Democrats were talking about for a while, and he's so feverishly for it that he attacked Chip Roy and wants him primaried because he's against it. Like, what the fuck? And Trump said yesterday, like, if Democrats want to help get rid of the debt ceiling, I'll lead the charge.
Right. I think what we need to do moving forward is like when you see Barack Obama having a conversation with Donald Trump, the answer should the forward or the message should be, look, Barack Obama's turning Trump into a Democrat.
Yep.
When Fetterman goes down, like he's listening to Fetterman, and from Fetterman's point of view, like what Fetterman's like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to talk to him. We haven't done anything yet. And he's setting himself up to later say, well, I tried. Hey, Dems, I tried to get him to do our stuff, but he's not going to do it. So now let's try to, get him out of office. Like we're at this point where,
and also Trump in the same,
so many things are like that.
Yeah. In the same moment. And Trump doesn't get the excuse of they were against me and they fought me every step of the way from the very beginning. He doesn't have that excuse anymore. They came to him and went, hey, what do you got? Well, let me hear what you're talking about. And when he finally gets to it, this is the fun part. When he finally gets to what the solutions are, but for like the deportation thing, which will be a monster and will have to be dealt with on the ground because there's all sorts of state and legal things. So it's absurd, and he will blather just like Greenland and the fucking Panama Canal. It's just a lot of loud flapping until it happens. But every other thing from, shoring up Medicare, Social Security, making sure that he believes, he's selling the idea that he wants them to survive and he doesn't want to do any cuts to them. He'll need Democrats to protect them. He's not going to get them any other way than to give them a little bit in the budget or something like those things. So they have leverage that maggots don't. It's bizarre how people don't see that to me. And he's not. I said this on Dean's show, a little bit ago. So if you watch it later, don't be surprised. But I was like, we're not dealing with the Donald Trump of 2012 even.
Right.
We're dealing with jelly-brained, sad, lumpy Donald Trump who's looking for a friend anywhere he can find one, who's scared shitless. And
by the way, the people coming after him are all on the right.
Yes.
That every single person has been on the right. The bombs, the assassination attempts. It's not the left coming after the guy, and he knows it.
Yep.
Anyway, but the deportation thing's a really interesting one because you say they're weaponizing empathy. Like the way that it's set up, it makes Democrats seem like they're supporting people breaking the law. Right. And like that's what Dems have to be really careful about. Like you can be for taking care of people and have the empathy for the people that are there, but you also have to be careful that you aren't like blindly defending people that actually are breaking the law. You're not baited
onto their ground in a talking point.
Exactly.
There's a Sun Tzu Art of War concept called dead ground, which is it's kind of for lack of a better expression, there's hillside and then there's a valley in the center. It's a kill box. And so if you can lure your enemy onto dead ground, there is no way to survive on dead ground. It is going to kill you. It's just what it's physically designed to do that. And so both, in any kind of debate, in any kind of argument, most of the time you're trying to, if you believe the other side is absurd in their claims or where they will follow, the ad absurdum or ad infinitum version of their argument, if you believe they will go off a cliff like lemmings, like maggots tend to do, what you want to do is lead them into dead ground. You want to walk them out and go, okay, what does that look like? Okay, what does that look like? Okay, sounds good. But then what? And then you finally get them in that position and they're like standing in a valley surrounded by, braves with arrows all around them. And they're like, oh shit. This is indefensible. And for all the, they don't care and they don't care or whatever. They absolutely care. And Trump's ego is so fucking delicate that's why he so wants CNN to like him. He so wants to be friends with the Obamas instead of these dipshits he hangs around with. Totally. But he would much rather. It's so ironic.
He wants to hook his cart to Obama's legacy. Obama's the most popular president we've had in my lifetime. Like, it's not even close. So but the defense of breaking the law is an interesting one because the right will come back at you and say, when you're like, Trump is a criminal, we need to put Trump in jail. They're like, well, wait, you're okay with people breaking the law. Why can't he break the law? He's breaking the law for me. You're letting them break the law for them, right? Like we're putting ourselves in a bad spot.
Even when they know it's a bad parallel,
exactly, it doesn't matter. They'll pivot.
Yeah, bailing out protesters who were scooped up when violent rioters got arrested, and there were protesters that weren't, and they got scooped up, and then bailing those folks out, whereas somebody who actually committed acts of violence should be in jail. Bailing the protesters out, to them, that's bailing out the rioters. That these were not BLM protests, they were BLM riots, part and parcel, because the rioters were allowed to hijack the visual, because the visual, look at the LA fires. Look at the LA fires. There's so much going on in the world, but people are riveted, not just because it's an extraordinary thing, but because fire draws the eye. And it's almost primordial with us. It's written into our DNA. It's just keep your eye on the fire. And so people are just staring at this. The same thing is true of like the Portland riots. That's why it became kind of a joke. Like they were firebombing guys were throwing Molotov cocktails at the cops and at the state building. But the rest of the city was basically just people standing around with signs. But none of that was seen, right? And so they were able to hijack that. And then we talked about TikTok and whether it should be banned, and it should. But we talked about how, the TikTok algorithm bumps those things up. It does it on purpose to build that, yes, hashtag rip Portland, absolutely, so sad. Build up that division and make it seem even more extreme.
Exactly.
So yeah.
On the sundial, there's like a meridian through the middle, right, through the vertical, and then you got the far left on one side and the far right on the other side, and these arguments are happening between, let's say, 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Like it's all happening there. And it doesn't take a lot to tip it back to the other way. Right. And, you can, when I say tipping, it's really important because we know that effectively Trump won in the exact same way that Biden won. He just knocked over the edge, or just knocked it over
Convinced that margin, right?
Yeah, the margin in each of those states was almost identical, you know, relative to what Biden did. So he just happened to tip all 7, and you can think what you want about that. All I'm getting at is like that the effort that we need to make, if targeted, is not that much. Like it won't take a lot. It just needs to be targeted properly, and we can't be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right. Look at it's so bizarre too, because the way Steve Bannon is talking about billionaires around Trump sounds hilariously like Bernie Sanders. Now, I don't think he's honest. I don't think he's an honest broker. I think he's full of shit.
Right.
And I think what he's mad is that Guo and Guai and some of Bannon's fellow friendly billionaires aren't the ones in the circle. He's mad at the other billionaires, and so he wants his group of billionaires, and they're not that way. But still, the language he's using is fucking hilarious.
And we should be using the language because everybody understands the language. Like that's an interesting thing as well. Like the idea that the left needs to build an media infrastructure like the right has. I don't think that's the way to go. I think what you do is you go into the right's media and use their media to get your message across, because it's already there. Why build up a whole new thing when the thing's already there?
And they've spent years making their fucking their followers as dough-headed as possible. Like it is just loose, damp soil, far as the eye can see.
And so I've been listening to some Rogan and stuff because I'm interested, and it's like the way everybody talks to each other in those settings. It's like this. Well, what about? Yeah, right. I was thinking, and so I had this story. Is it Bill Burr, the comedian?
Yeah.
So like in my family, somebody mentioned that they thought Bill Burr was funny, and another person in my family who's like super political, he was like on the I hate Bill Burr because he said something, and they got in a little bit of an argument. It was fine. It was just family, right?
Right.
But so I got in my head like, oh, the left must not like Bill Burr, right? So I heard some things, but then I saw this Joe Rogan's short where Rogan asked him about masks, asked Bill Burr about masks, and Bill Burr's response was like so interestingly perfect. Yeah, because he's already, like I said, Bill Burr kind of tips. He's kind of on the edge, like he's a little bit back and forth, and that you don't quite know. Is he right? Is he left? Like, I don't get what's happening. He was basically said, dude, I don't want to talk about this. We're not doctors. Yeah. And he went on this.
Why the fuck would I listen to you? Right. Exactly.
And it was perfectly meshed with the rhetoric and the sort of like tone of Joe Rogan.
Right.
And that's the thing is like, if you can convince a guy like Joe Rogan that he was kind of being dumb for the last couple of years, he'll switch on a dime.
Totally.
Because it's all ego based. 2 years talking about how dumb he was back then.
Right. He'd rather be right than happy. And so he will, he does he says some embarrassing shit, and then when he gets called on it, he just, he kind of scampers away. He doesn't. Trump has a tendency to defend when he's wrong because his ego's on the line. Rogan doesn't. He just tries to hide from it. And you can keep bringing it up. You can go, oh, yeah, you're that asshole who thought that Biden thought there were airports during the Civil War, not, or the Revolutionary War when Trump said it. Yeah, why did you think that? And he'll grind on it. He'll avoid it, but he'll recognize it. Whereas Trump would go, well, they did kind of, if you think about it. And he'd make up this idea that the Wright brothers were born in the 1400s or some shit. Like that's how he reacts to it. But you're absolutely right. And when it comes to Burr, I don't know him well. I've only met him maybe twice. One in particular, he played drums on a AC/DC song at a multiple sclerosis benefit that I did. It's Rock Against MS. And he showed up, which was good. And he played drums on Highway to Hell, which again, he was just learning, and it's the perfect just learning song. Just listen to it. Like, it's cute. But and he looked like he was panicking when people were talking to him all the time, because he's one of those people where like he seems like a decent enough guy most of the time, but he's got strong opinions, but he doesn't know whether this is his space or someone else's. He's deferential to that, which is not a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
So overall, he is not a Rogan in this regard. And watch him on Bill Maher's show throwing the same shit. He did the same thing he did to Rogan on Bill Maher's thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not like trying to advocate for anyone. Like we got to stop putting people in these boxes. Like,
yes,
what I'm talking about is if you settle your anger, because everybody's got a lot of reason to be angry right now.
Sure.
But if you settle your anger and just listen to what's happening, like how are they talking? Like how are they doing it? I have a theory about that Trump is basically doing the same thing any other politician did. He's just doing it the opposite way. Like and if you can like isolate for yourself,
it's just louder and dumber.
Well, I would say that, so the idea that you might have said this, a good politician waits until they have to make a choice. So, and that's super important. So you don't commit to anything. You wait until you have to commit, and then you commit when you have to commit. And that sort of turned into like they just don't want to answer a question. Like they're lying, and then not wanting to answer a question became a lie, right? So still, like politicians will do that. They'll sort of say, well, we got to put a committee together, and I'm not sure about this gay marriage thing. And, like we got to think about it. And what Trump does, so essentially they're delaying the choice, right? So that when they get to the choice and they make the choice, they're not like inundated with a bunch of people mad at them that they changed their mind, right? So what Trump does is the exact opposite of that. He says everything. He said he says we should do every single version of every single thing we said. He never shuts the fuck up, right?
Right.
So then when he gets to when he had to make a decision, he just chooses something, and he doesn't. The reason he isn't held to account is because he never made a choice.
There was never a flag. There was never a flag in the ground in the first place. It's all over the place.
So
He's moving the goalposts so much.
Same thing?
Yeah. Well, and also he also jettisons it to details that will come in later, which is either his very respected people he puts in making the decision for him because he's delegated them. That dude, Steve Witkoff, the guy who was with him when he was shot at on the golf course or almost shot at on the golf course, he put him in charge of like the hostage negotiation with fucking Hamas. It's ridiculous. And he brings him up here. He goes, Steve, come up here and say something. And Steve Witkoff comes up there and he goes, let me tell you something about Donald Trump. He's a man who knows how to delegate, which basically means he just told me take care of it. He didn't give me any fucking instruction. He said, I want this, go make it happen. Even if it's not fucking possible, right? And if it doesn't happen, it's not on him. He told you to get your fucking job done, and we got to get somebody else who can get it done.
Exactly.
Even if it's not doable, it's not because it's an impossible ask or it's a stupid concept, nuking a hurricane. We just got to find the right army guy who will push the button and nuke the hurricane, right? And it's never his fault for making up something as stupid as nuking hurricanes. It's that he won't have the people who will carry it out, and we don't even know if it works. Because nobody will try it. Like, we have scientists and we have computers that can do models. And also it's nuts and what's wrong with you. But, that's his reasoning. And it extrapolates to the Gaza hostage thing. It extrapolates to Russia, Ukraine. Like this idea, that he was going to, I know what I'm going to say as soon as I talk to him. And I'm going to tell him. That plays into the same thing. I know what I'm going to say to them and they got to take it. If they don't, they're terrible and bad and stupid and don't know what they got.
Exactly.
They don't know how to make a deal.
That's how. So I'll talk about Ukraine for a second. Like that's how he pivots. So he already said, I think, or somebody said to European people, like they're going to wait 6 months before they decide what to do for Ukraine. It's been in the news lately, right? So he's already taken the 24 hours from being elected to the 24 hours after he's inaugurated to 6 months later, right?
Right.
So because he said, I'll solve it, he'll get to the point where maybe they go 6 months and they do some negotiations and it doesn't work, right? So, and that's what, Phil says the same thing. It's not going to work, right? So you get to 6 months, it didn't work. What does Trump do? He says, I tried. but we got to solve it. So I'm going to dump a bunch of missiles in Ukraine and let them take Russia, right? Like,
right.
And then he can be the tough guy. He says he tried. So
right.
you see, he's like saying everything, in this, and that's opposed to a more traditional approach that currently the Democrats have, which is you want to not say anything because you're afraid to offend, or you're. And so my thought is, if you think about seeing how that works, like the message is like, don't be afraid to talk about stuff that you're still trying to figure out, and find a way in your language to make it more open-ended, right? So, what do you think about this? Well, I'm not sure what I think about this because here's one side and here's the other side and here's a third side. So we got to really think about this,
And there's some details that are just coming in. There are things we need to look at because it seems, I understand where people we should just do this. But that's largely because, unfortunately, they are being denied information or don't have access to it, or that information just has not been gathered. And so they're only working with half the equation. So, of course, they think the equation equals this very simply because they're missing all these other points. I had a similar talk with Tara on Monday, which I think you might have been referencing when we started, which was she wasn't aware that Sinema and Sanders were on the same side of the community college funding issue because both of those states, Arizona and Vermont, have an outsized number of citizens that use community college funding more than any other thing, more than universities. They have more, it's just a big thing. And for both of them, it's a huge number compared to even, it matches New York's. And it's weird that it does. But so those bills are more important to them. And so they're more malleable on making sure that part of it gets through than maybe other Democrats who are like, what the fuck is that? Why would we give this kind of money to this thing, right? So, or even Republicans who are fighting against it, who are counting on Sinema to run interference at one point for them, and they're like, "Why is she voting for this?" Well, because it's her state. That's why. Same reason you might have been able to count on John McCain all the time, but he would have voted for it too, because that's the nature of Arizona. They have interests of the state that, as the representative of that state, they are duly obligated to protect. Right, in whatever way they see fit. Now they can be wrong, they can be misguided, they can overcompensate, they can favor, pick winners and losers, whatever you want to call it, in their state, and favor their donors versus others. That's always a possibility. But the primary aspect of it does exist in every single state, and there are needs and wants in Wyoming that are different than what fucking Oklahoma or California or Washington State would. Right.
Right. So, and I love you said yesterday, we're sorry, this is well, it's almost 12:30. Let's call 12:30 our cutoff, and then we're
for this stuff. Yeah, so we'll move on. Sure.
So, you mentioned something about the sundial thing that we were talking about before. You mentioned something about earlier or yesterday maybe, like the policy is partisan, not the problem, or something like that?
Yeah, the policy solutions are the top. The issue is not partisan.
The solution is
partisan.
Not partisan.
Right.
And what I was thinking about was this again, the sundial, left, right, far, center is a bottom.
Yeah.
Like if you were to try to diagram an issue like immigration or college, pay for college debt or Social Security, like where would I put that on the dial? You can't. You can't put it on the dial because it's not left or right. It's not far. There's no problem or
infrastructure.
No issue.
Infrastructure is not left or right. Like it isn't. You need it. It has to exist. The question is, do we have enough? Do we not have? Do we have too much? Do we allocate it properly? Do we not allocate it properly? Is it resilient enough technology or not? Are we funding these kind of bridges versus these kind of, that's policy. That's the stuff you work out. But the issue itself isn't at all. And to some degree, healthcare is a great example of one of those where it seems like a very partisan thing. But the ACA has benefited people in red states, allowing them to stay on. There's tons of maggots that have pre-existing conditions and know that if they lost it, they would never get insurance again. And that's why they weren't up Trump's ass about getting rid of it, because they knew. They didn't care.
And because there's so many things that Trump has said and he's taken every position ever,
Right.
like as a Democrat, all you have to do is go back and look for when he took the position you had. And
Yeah.
when you're talking about that position, just say, well, I agree with Trump, and Trump agrees with me that we should do this.
Yeah,
Look,
I think the second one is the important one. Trump agrees with me on this. That will drive them fucking batshit, and it'll be true. Because at some point, he has. I don't care what the issue is. At some point, Trump has said something that supports stuff that I've said on this show about a particular issue. It's super goddamn weird. Even if just the debt ceiling, capping insulin at $35, even though he claims he did it, he did not. But even him needing to claim it shows that a big significant part of his party and his base are for that kind of protections for consumers of medical care that is uniform and across a broad spectrum of people. Like, that's not a medicine. Insulin was not invented. It was discovered or segmented out, and we all produce it. So nobody can own it, that kind of stuff. So the idea of capping it, that works right across everybody. It's one of those things where you could stop an argument almost seemingly with anybody. Like, because none of them are going to go, we should be able to charge, the free market should charge whatever it wants for insulin. Like, nobody even bothers to do that on the right.
So you don't even need to win the argument. All you need to do is put it out there and flood the zone. Trump floods the zone. Like, you flood the zone on podcasts. You flood the zone on going on Fox News and just being like, oh, well, I was just thinking, wait a minute. And it's always these things where they're like, it's like these aha moments, like the way they communicate. It's like these aha moments, like, well, what about, oh, I didn't think of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, where a thing that seems so far left all of a sudden becomes right. Like, how did, the homeopathic people or the organic medicine people all of a sudden became right-wing anti-vaxxers, right? Like, they're so close to each other, you can tip them. Like,
they're borderline sovereign citizens. They're biological sovereign citizens in that regard. They have a lot of in common and a lot of them are easy to lead down the QAnon route because it's got a lot of pseudo-spiritual stuff. And you can bring them back.
I'm talking about the people who are on the fence, like that just hear the stuff. And so our version, the left's version of flooding the zone, it needs to be that you get out there and you are able to talk about complex things, as you say, in a way that's open-ended. It has to be open-ended because like you want the other person listening to you to fill in the blanks. You don't want to commit. You want them to fill in the blanks. And that's what Trump does so well.
Because they will anyways.
They will anyways. Exactly.
Yes.
Like you've
that's the irony.
I'm connecting it to you because that's on your show, but I think I use the term a lot that you use, which is I'd rather be a legend than a brand.
Yeah.
A legend is like your consumers of what you're putting out. They make you what they want you to be, whereas a brand is something you try to make them believe it to be, right? So like Coca-Cola can only be Coca-Cola, whereas Apple is like, what is Apple? Apple, like, tell me what Apple is. Like,
Did they make phones, software, computers? Is it an ecosystem? Is it a quality of life? Is it Is it Siri? Is it the phone? Yeah, so they can be used in both directions. It's a double-edged sword. Like, all these things they can be used as like ways of communicating, I think. Okay. Well, it's 12. Yeah. We made that line. Yes, we'll try and not cross that line. and right at 11 my time, I'm going to bug out and go back to CES. And so this afternoon's show, just so you guys know, might be later than normal because CES ends at like 4 and this is the last day of it. So I'm going to try and get as much stuff as I can. So I might punt my show 2 hours later tonight, if that's all right. And what we'll largely cover. But go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting you.
No. It's just housekeeping. So just so you guys know,
So I was going to ask you, like, a couple. Maybe we can riff off of a couple things you saw at CES. You were there on Wednesday or Tuesday.
Yeah, I was there Tuesday, and I did a drive-by on Wednesday to one of the other halls because it was just like there's so much. Here's what it was interesting to me more than anything else. Let's see if I can. Man, I don't have to bring up any images. We can just talk
Oh
about
yeah,
this because there's plenty of.
CES is Consumer Electronics Show. It's in Vegas every year, right around this time. Somebody
Yes.
asked
So
about that.
and what it is it's a combination of things. One is it's prototypical stuff that's coming out that this is in 3 years. This is going to be our big advanced model, and this year what we're selling is this, but this is where we're headed. And so it's if you talk about extending a brand and its economic viability over the next couple of years while you're showing off the wares you actually make today. Okay. So there was a mix of a lot of things there. Now, the big hall, the central hall, is the big spenders. And so when you walk in there, literally LG with its TV screens and its home automation stuff took up an enormous amount of space. Like you sit in these like fake living rooms and watch the blinds go up and down, and then they have miniature versions of them and whatever. And it's cool. I mean, these are huge things, right? And it's about like pissing in the corners and establishing market dominance like a dog. And I get it. Like they want to show that like not only do we have the money to show off, but we've got the products that everybody wants and yet. So LG's been doing very well. You literally walk in and it's like boom. And then like Nikon everybody's bag is a Nikon because Nikon's trying to reclaim the camera world from ages old against Black Magic, which was nipping at its heels and picking up most of the cinema cameras and the like, and this creator world of DSLR, is like little hand cams that everybody uses to film, that are old photography cams that just do video as well and have nice lenses. Nikon's like, oh, okay, we're going to be the creator camera going forward on a nice scale. When you see somebody walking around with a nice camera, it's a Nikon, right? So I get it. It's what you got to do. But there are two other halls, the North Hall and the West Hall. The North Hall is the one I'm going to go to today because I went to Aptera's. Aptera's in what's called the Central Plaza. They're outside. They got three of the vehicles here. They got one that they're driving people around in, one you can sit in and kind of see how it works that's in the outdoor space. And then they've got one that's blown up, that's literally like a sculpture where all the pieces are extended out, That's cool. But yeah, it's really cool. And I took some footage of it. I'm going to get more footage today of it. So you can see how it's put together, and it's kind of how the shells are printed and put together. It's really neat. And the car itself, I think the most impressive thing was they were giving people rides, and it had more energy when it was done driving everybody around than when it left.
Yeah. Is that because does it have solar panels on, or is it just like regenerative braking and
both?
Things like that?
Yeah. So it has solar panels on it. It's Vegas, so it's very sunny. Even though it's cold, it's still very sunny. And it's got regenerative braking on it as well. So they're just zip, and then as they brake, because the engine's so powerful, the regenerative braking is so intense that it creates enough of an electrical charge to almost store the last, like from the last stoplight to the next one. It uses less, it gains more light power, solar power in braking, or whatever, battery power in braking, than it does in just that little electric engine kicking that light vehicle with just two people in it, whatever the next block and a half or 2 blocks,
Makes
whatever
sense.
it is. So it's pretty cool.
To anybody, so regenerative braking is if you have a motor and you put power to the motor and it drives the car, if you take power away from the motor and then you let the car basically coast and the car is spinning the motor becomes a generator and it puts power back into the thing. And, they've been using regenerative braking on many things for quite some time.
That's how a lot of hybrids work too. Almost every hybrid. So it can never be,
the regenerative braking can never by itself put more back in, because that would be a perpetual motion machine. But if you add the solar panels plus that together will, it sounds like in certain conditions will basically charge
if you're stuck in traffic, you won't run out of power essentially, because the efficiency versus what's being used by the vehicle, even if you're talking about the entire atmospherics in it, air conditioning, radio, all that kind of stuff, the battery level is so low because it's like a phone. Trucker John just asked me, how are you going to ride the Vegas Loop? That's the Hyperloop that Elon Musk is doing. No, I am not. I have no interest. It's silly. And
Is it kind of working now? Or?
No, it's just like one stretch between two buildings, and it's like a demo. And you can ride it at the convention center. He did it from one convention center thing to the other because he's trying to, again, it's just his way of being at CES. Okay, so this is the standout thing even beyond that. And I think it's an important thing. So I didn't see a Tesla thing anywhere there. Now, maybe they don't have to because they're already brand whatever. But everybody has a new thing out. Rivian was there. There's other electric car companies that are absolutely there. Rivian's stock has gone up as Tesla's has gone down. Tesla's is only going up because of his proximity to the president and its diversification. It's getting into robotics and all this other stuff. So Tesla's not a car company anymore. And so everybody's like, oh, it's a thing company. Tesla's now becoming like Apple, like we were talking about. It's not really about what, the vehicles. If you don't like the vehicles, we make a bunch of shit. We make robots and that's what he's trying to do.
Like anything else, these guys want to make software because software is way cheaper to make than hardware.
And replace, certainly, right.
Really expensive and hard to do. So they're like,
exactly.
How can we not make cars because we're losing money on that?
Right.
And how can we make self-driving software or something like that?
For other cars. Right. So
exactly.
Anyways, so I wandered around. I saw the Unitree booth, which makes those like the dogs that we see everywhere, the crickets, I call them, because they don't look like dogs. They look like crickets to me. They got that LiDAR thing on where the muzzle would be, so that's always spinning and it makes them look like an insect. And then they had the walking ones. They had a tall humanoid one. But by the way, all of those were sitting and didn't stand while I was there. They all seemed to be having issues. But the little one that's this big is available only via remote control. And the one thing you could test on is you could push it and it would steady itself. It's got like essentially it's like what's the
like a gyroscope.
Segway. Yeah, it's got a gyroscope in it.
It's using gyroscopic, some form of that.
To balance itself. But that's not anywhere near the level of robotics that you're going to, that OpenAI and any of these other companies are near. So
just from the standpoint of like letting a robot sort of walk around in a place with a bunch of people, you don't want anybody getting hurt at CES. That would be a terrible marketing.
Right. So they're all narrow in the booth. Now everybody's got the dogs, and there's a dude running the dog on a hand controller, making it go through its motions, and he can shut off. Now they have avoidance mode that's automatic and AI based, where it can recognize multiple sensors and make decisions about what's, that's a table. I got too close to that table, but it's not moving towards me. I know the difference. That's a person. And it can tell faces and stuff and decide I'll avoid running into people versus whatever. But the point I was trying to make is that all these companies are there, right? All these, like OpenAI isn't with their stuff because I don't think they're quite ready yet. I think that's probably next year CES is going to be fucking all like walking robots. It's going to be nuts. But Tesla's not, it should already be there with a lot of stuff that it has, including XAI and Grok and all that stuff, because there are booths for all these things like ChatGPT doesn't need one, but everybody else has one. The Microsoft booth will walk you through Copilot and all that stuff. And they're all playing up the value of their AI stuff.
Right.
But not Tesla. And it's partly because their stuff is kind of shit, honestly.
If anybody's going to know the quality of the stuff, it would be the people at CES.
Yeah, exactly. The vendors and people who are going to sell it, right? And they know how, how Trump is like everything's 2 weeks away. With Elon Musk, it's 2 years. Everything's 2 years away.
Well, he's a over promise, under deliver guy. So
all the time,
it's going to be $1 million, and it'll really be 250,000.
Right. All the time. Yeah, and he's again, I don't doubt. So there were multiple versions of the crickets running around, little ones.
Okay.
The main the Unitree Go 2 is the one most people are used to seeing. Like, you're going to see rappers walking them on leashes at fucking red carpet events and stuff. You know what I mean? It'll be the dickhead toy. I want one. Because I want to fuck with it. I want to crack it open. But $1,500 is a little pricey. When they come down to $800, it might be in my range. I might start like, okay, I wouldn't feel too bad about it. I have an old laptop that costs that, and then it, outlived its usefulness. Right? So,
you can almost make one that's not too far away from it.
I know. Well, right. So that's that's the point I'm trying to make is that the Go-To is based on open source software anyways. The internal mechanism is no different than any of the 3D printed ones that I saw people just doing to show off their basically their version of Raspberry Pi boards that they sell at, there's little booths that do that kind of stuff. And all you got to do is get the shit and make it. Like, it's online. Like, all the robotic stuff around it, the learning software, that's free from NVIDIA. You can set it loose in Eureka, right?
Yeah.
So what struck me about this thing is that there's so many, that is like a uniform technology that is open source. And so any company that wants to make these things is going to have to work totally in add-ons and comfort of use. But there was one thing that was crucial, and there's a line, and this is sort of the heart and soul of Fried AI and what we talk about here.
Okay.
Is that all of them have access to ChatGPT. The standing robots, the Tesla bot, the fucking Go-To, the little crickets, all that shit. But never the twain shall meet. The AI that's in it that tells it how to move its legs and walk around and jump and stand up and react to things is one thing. And then ChatGPT is wholly disconnected. So you cannot, you can't say to it, whatever its name is in ChatGPT that you give it, you call it Arlo. You're like, hey, Arlo, go get me a beer. Go walk over there and pick that up. It can't register that phrasing unless you've taught it the specific words, and it is just taking vocal commands that are a different board entirely. Like, the AI board is one thing, and it sits there, so it has a speaker attached to it and all that, but it can't tell the robot to do shit. They're two different entities entirely. And until they match...
Are you observing this separation, or are they selling it as that?
No, I'm observing it. I think I think people are not paying attention to how extraordinary that step will be when that's that crisscross. You're going to talk about like how we went from large language models to AI and the chat part of it. None of this is fucking useful. You buy a Go-To right now, and you buy it, and you talk to it like it's because it's got ChatGPT, right? You should be able to talk to it. You can't tell it via ChatGPT to do anything. It has to have pre-programmed voice codes and attenuated to your voice so that in a crowd of people or whatever, it knows to only listen to you because it'll kill somebody or to fall over or knock something over.
Well, people are worried about that. But what will really happen is it'll accidentally run into somebody and hurt them.
Totally.
Then all of a sudden on the news, what do you think the news article is going to be?
Robot murders grandma.
Right. Robot run by AI breaks man's arm at CES, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's what it's going to be, and then everybody's going to flip out.
Right, and that's partly why it's not connected, right? So somebody can't just yell at it like attack, right? And it goes, I know what attack is. It hasn't been
tested either. Like, it's right. I mean, it's going to happen, but like these things need time. They need to be tested, and mistakes and that need to happen, happening. And you need to fix them.
Yeah. Right. That testing is happening, and people are talking about it as if it's not, though. They're talking about it like, oh my God, this robot, and it's got ChatGPT built in. Like, the language of it is like it would infuriate you. I just know, like, standing there, I'm like, this is driving me fucking nuts. It would make Rob and I just go, ugh. Like, if you and I were walking around CES, hearing the spiel.
That's how all these things. I mean, I think of like the Detroit Auto Show, which used to be like the place where you would show the concept car. And it was obvious that the concept car was like not real, right? Because they literally separated so much from reality. They wanted you to do that, right? And then maybe 2 years later, a thing would come out and it would look a little different, but it kind of had the same idea as the concept car, because the purpose of the event was to get people like excited and then comment about it.
Right.
See before you spend all the money to develop it, you see what they like and then you make it, right? That's not the case anymore, because that 2 years is now like 2 months. And so there's a software that's sort of like constantly changing. And the only thing that you can kind of feed in to make it hardware is like a bunch of Chinese servos attached to, arms. Like, that's effectively what what the hardware is.
That's right. And it does, and you could 3D print all of it or buy parts and ratchet them together with however you would like. You could take wood, sand it fucking down into the shapes you want, drill holes in it, run the servo through there, and you've got a wooden dog running around. Like it's the same thing, or a cricket. To your point though,
the winner of this is going to be who figures out how to like make a viable product that people actually want and pay for.
Right.
And that's hard. That's really, really hard. So right now, basically you just got a bunch of toys. They're just showing you a bunch of toys that are sitting there, and they're like little remote control cars. Basically, they just look like humanoid robots.
Okay, so the obviously like the Go-To and the other dogs like that. They have one that's patrolling Mar-a-Lago, and they've talked about these. These things have been around military bases for a while now. Boston Dynamics dogs have been guarding. And by guarding, they just walk around with a camera. They're basically surveillance ground drones that don't make any noise. So a drone, you could do this with drones, but they run out of battery. They have to deal with wind, and they would, they got limited range, and they'd be noisy. These things can sit and move around, and they can make noise or they can walk slowly. And you can actually train them in that regard to do those specific actions. But they're not that different from like the robots we talk about on assembly lines that do one thing and do it over and over again.
Right.
There's an element of, decision making within the AI that they allow it to have, but it's based on those limited commands built into it. The thing I'm trying to make is that, well, Unitree's full of shit. I mean, we know this. Basically whatever Unitree says today, Elon Musk is saying about the Optimus tomorrow, and they're both lying out their ass. Neither one of them know what the fuck they're talking about. So, and it's really obvious, but they're not selling the concept car of the future. They're saying this works now, and it absolutely fucking doesn't. And that's the annoying part. Other people have those things, and to your point, there's other booths that have the Go-To dog or a version of it walking around, and people are coming over and clapping and watching it do shit, but they're selling something else entirely. They're like, we have an AI surveillance software that takes in whatever you want. If you have one of these dogs or if you have a fucking camera, it doesn't matter. We isolate faces, and we can tell the difference between your employees and not employees, and you don't have to, and we're private, so you don't have to send your employees' facial recognition shit to the cloud and back, so it's insecure. You do it on site, and then you can erase it if they get fired, so they don't have to, you don't get sued because you've given away their facial scan to some asshole. So like they do that they're selling that thing. And so the dog cricket thing is really just to bring people to the booth. It's like it's like the new big boobed booth girl. It really is. Like it's a robot. They're basically booby girls, like they used to have at all the other
every
Vegas.
Other thing in Vegas.
All the other Vegas conventions. Right, they have like girls handing out stuff that are attractive, and guys, but they're attractive people that are handing out stuff. I got buzzed by how do I put this? A former viewer of a show that I did a long time ago, a guy who was clearly like, "Oh, hi, can I tell you a little bit about what we do in our booth?" And I'm like, I kind of think I know probably more about what you do in the booth than you do, but sure, feel free. He was nice enough; it was fine. But that's what he was there for. He was there to like either make the ladies feel like an attractive guy is talking to them, or the men feel like there's an attractive guy talking to them, whatever they thought. So point being is the dogs are now that for a lot of these booths.
So what I'm hearing is like when we talk a lot about like ChatGPT, Gemini, that sort of thing, you're in like this window and you're communicating with it, but the window isn't, or the chat bot, whatever, isn't like taking over your mouse and clicking the thing for you. Like you still have to like follow directions and go do it. That's kind of what robots are still like right now. That's basically like there's not a connection between the two, and the LLM is not actually like taking the reins or moving the joysticks for you. And that's probably not going to happen. So it'll happen in computers first, probably. So I talked a little bit last week about using Gemini to like sharing your screen with Gemini and working together. That's still not Gemini going the other direction and like putting a circle around the thing it wants me to click. It's just describing it. Like click on file, click on.
It's like somebody over your shoulder going, there it is. You see that menu right there? Like if you had somebody who was helping you out and they're literally just on call right there and they can point at your screen and go, see that right there? Yeah, click on that one. Okay, click on that. We've all been in a situation where we either had to do that for somebody else if you have a parent who gets a new device or a new piece of software or has to make some sort of thing happen online. Or we are just, are learning something new. You're taking like a class in some sort of software or you get a job where you have to learn this particular piece of software to work here. That it now does all that.
It's going to be some time before a robot needs to get from point A to point B, and maybe there's a door in between. And without you telling it it's there, it's going to get to point B, recognize in the middle there's a door, recognize there's a handle, if it's a circle handle or a lever handle, and it's going to be able to open either one, no matter what. Open the door and get to point B, maybe close it behind them. Like that is in physical land, that's akin to it's taking over my mouse and doing the thing. And that leap, it's going to be dangerous at first, mostly because of mistakes, like because you're not going to quite know what it's going to do and it's going to screw up a lot, right?
Yes.
Until it's trained, until generally things get trained better or something like that. So I don't see that. And the second part, as it's making mistakes, is that the public, like consumers, are going to be scared of it. So something's got to bridge that gap. And I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but somebody will come up. I mean, everybody's trying to come up with it. So we're going to get a lot of options. That's for sure.
Well, here's one of the things like they'll do right away, which is vacant houses. If you have an Airbnb or something, having it's like having a Roomba that only runs after the guest leaves. Having a robot that restocks the shelves and puts stuff back, and you always keep this thing in the garage full of or can run the dishwasher and shit like that without a person having to be there. And as soon as the client leaves, then as soon as they lock the door and the contract ends or whatever, you get a notification. You go, clean up, and it will walk around and make the beds and that kind of stuff. And it will do all the things that you expect in a house, but there's no other human being in there to bump into until it gets its ground. And then you soft train it. They're doing this with a bunch of people, like living with a robot for 48 hours and that kind of shit, where it's basically doing those things and you see if it can not run into you while it's doing it or not interrupt you is the other thing. One of the things, let me see if I can show you this too, because this is I would call
my version of that is a robotic lawnmower. Like if you think about something autonomously mowing your lawn, think about the complexity. It seems so simple at first, but the complexity of mowing your lawn, everybody's lawn's different, and hills and edging and like there's all kinds of stuff.
And not chucking rocks into the neighbor's yard and hitting.
Do you have a fence or no fence? Is it going to go in the neighbor's yard? Like, is it going to run over an animal or a kid? There's all kinds of stuff.
It's some serious shit, right? Let me see if I can put this up on screen, and pardon me if I don't have if your name is wrong on the thing when we come back. And you're not Philip Bittner, so I'll change that. This is that's Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. That's the form, like the
Form 2, is it?
Yeah, the 2. From OpenAI's robot. That's Digit. That's the one that's working in North Carolina already in a packing factory. He's the only person in all of these things that I saw that had multiple robots around him.
Yeah, because their stuff is in all of them.
Is in everything, right? That's exactly right.
Jetson is. I mean, you really need a Jetson for that. That's basically the only way to do it.
That's right. So the little computer that they made with their super chip that they've been making is small enough and requires so little energy that's what's making walkable robots possible at this point. Like they are the driving force behind all these. They are also the chips that drive the training mechanisms as well. So these big farms where they're learning how to move and all this stuff, because that's like whatever the thing that Elon Musk thinks he's building in fucking Memphis is not going to be to train an AI because it's already done. Like
He's just building a data center.
He's building a cloud center. It's AWS. He's trying to compete with AWS on the cheap. Or what he wants to be, I think, is the right wing's version of AWS. Right?
Maybe, sure.
like Don Jr. is always coming up with these fucking right wing versions of normal shit. And he wants to carve off a piece for their side. They're like, there was the Act Blue thing to work for, to help elect Democrats and raise money for them or whatever. So they created their own version of it. And then once they alleged that people were losing their spot at a bank or where they're being debanked. Remember that shit? So they started their own right wing bank, or there was going to be too many limits on crypto, so they decided, okay, we'll be the ones that, we'll form our own crypto exchange to deal with this. And it's just, it's fucking stupid. But the point is that they're trying to pick up that slack. I think Musk is trying to do the same thing. Even if you're never McDonald's, being Burger King ain't so bad. And I think a lot of these guys know that 80%, 20% of a market share instead of 80%, which is what the big dogs usually have. If you can get 20% of it, of the rest, that's still a lot of money. And it's going to be, and especially in AI and that kind of stuff, it's going to be huge. You're talking about $15 to $30 trillion worth of added worth over the next little bit. Now, there is one article in this, and this is what everybody's like talking about, how like NVIDIA won CES hands down. And that's, to your point, the reason is because their shit is in everything.
The foundation of all this, it flows through an NVIDIA chip at some point in time. That's just the way it is right now.
Yeah, because that's just the position that they were in for this. Now, where is it? So this is the other thing that I thought was fascinating, and I wanted to talk to you about. So this is...
this is exactly our message, right?
This is what you and I have been talking about, and they're finally coming around. They're starting to finally take us seriously, Rob. AI could create 78 million more jobs than it eliminates by 2030. As AGI, it says as AGI talk sparks job loss fears. New WEF report projects AI-driven net job growth by 2030 because the jobs around it will be as necessary. And again, it kind of to that robot thing. Humans are still going to be the extension between what AI wants to do and how it gets done. Even if they use a robot to do it, there will be a human in the loop because of safety and legality and comfort and understanding, and that training something to do certain things will be a lot harder than just getting a person to do it. And if you can get a person who understands it, it can explain it to a bunch of robots, in a material sense, and then it works with them to make sure they're all running efficiently, right?
Yeah. So both robots and AI are really more augmenting humans. They're not doing it. They're augmenting. And we have to start thinking about it like that. It's just extending your hand or making you more accurate or faster or whatever the thing is, or safer.
That's right. That's right. And so one of the things you and I talked about before, and I can't remember if we did it on or offline because a lot of we're so real. You and I, we just talk like we talk. But
this is so. If we're sitting down at dinner, this is what we talk about.
This is what it sounds like. Is exactly it.
We talk about our families too and all that.
Yes, right. Just to get it out of the way. But one of the things we talked about is that we have already outsourced the AI jobs and the robot jobs. We just did it to poor countries.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So cheap Chinese labor is the same as a robot. In terms of how it was used by U.S. companies to, make their products cheaper.
Do we care about a Chinese worker whether they have a pension? Nope. Do we care about a robot if they have a pension? Nope. Do we handle Chinese healthcare in those situations? Nope. Right? Do we care? Does a robot have healthcare? None of that stuff, is any different than when you outsource it to a poor country with low labor costs. The only difference is that morally, you could argue that that robots are a more moral way of doing it.
Sure, absolutely.
You know what I mean? if you're finding poor West Virginians to crawl down into a coal mine and get black lung on your behalf so you can get coal, so you can sell it, versus a bunch of machines that go down in it and never get black lung and only need parts replaced and can never die.
Or it's that first-person drone driven by the West Virginian.
That's right.
That sends the drone down.
Exactly.
Right?
Or four drones.
So now you have an augmented West Virginian, not a displaced West Virginian.
And most of those, and they won't get an illness from the job itself. Putting someone in harm's way, because that's the only way to extract the economic value or the power from that circumstance is if you have an option, it would be, it's more moral to use the robot. This is why I was saying, even with when we were talking about when Bernie Sanders was running for president, and I was like, of course I'll vote for him, but I got news for you. I'm not his problem. His problem is his voters the first time he uses a drone, because at some point he's going to be in a situation where he's got a choice to make, and it's going to be ugly. It's a presidential decision, and he's going to try to make the best decision he possibly can, and doing nothing won't be an option. And the option will be you can send in 5 guys or you can send in a drone. And drones don't come back draped in a flag draped coffin. Period. So you're going to go with it. You just are. You're not going to endanger 5 lives to save 1 in that regard if you don't have to. And that's just how it's going to be. I don't care who somebody is in that situation, it's going to happen. And so that's it extrapolates to this kind of moral choice in this circumstance. If you can get skin cancer being out in the sun too long picking fruit, it absolutely is the moral thing to try and create a contraption that picks the fruit. If people are going to eat it and you need it.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not quite sure why. So, I mean, everybody's working on autonomous robotics. Right. But to me, the easier thing to do is to have augmented robotics, meaning effectively like first-person machines that you literally drive from home. Like, why can't a apple picking robot be driven from my computer here? Instead of the mining tractor goes into the cave being driven by a person. So what people sort of misunderstand about when you automate something, it's a ton of work to automate something. It's way easier to just go up there with your hands and do it.
Sure.
And so there's a break point on the cost. Yeah. But if you could send a humanoid robot that was remote controlled by another person, and I'm not actually all that sure that a really well done first person robot isn't such a bad product. Like, I mean, Musk is not too far away. He's there now. Like, you put goggles on and you manipulate it.
It's like my argument about the fly. Like the transportation pods, the teleportation pods that he has in the fly can transport goods, but not flesh. Who gives a fuck? Oh my God. You've just ended all friction-based freight travel. Who cares if it can't take live flesh? Every non-physical thing, cans of soup, whatever, I don't give a shit. Like any wheels, tires, rubber, rare earth minerals, anything you'd have to ship can now be teleported. Do it. Who cares? That's trillions of dollars of value, and you can work the flesh part of it out later. Why jump to that point? And the same thing, I think, is what you're talking about. Like, you don't have to automatically do the automation. Now, I would say that they are doing that with surgery. Somebody brought that up in the chat room too. Is that
the Da Vinci, that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a comment,
remote surgery.
It's because, Rob, I want it doing my housework, not augmenting it. And so this is what I'm trying to talk about is, like, people are scared that they're going to displace us.
Right.
And, I think of this more like you're the operator of a backhoe, or you're the operator of a piece of heavy machinery during construction. There's no reason why you have to be sitting in the cab anymore. Like, we're at a point where you could literally drive that in a simulator at your house. So that machine can be like on Mars and you could be mining on Mars.
Right. Okay. So
that's still robotics, right?
I will agree with you, but I will split with you on one aspect of it, is that the 1-to-1 cost of a human being doing it is still an expense, even if they do it from home, unless you're outsourcing, you're giving, foreign workers a game controller and they're working on a farm in Idaho.
But most things, like when we think about the drones that the military flies, almost all of them are not one-to-one. They'll literally take off and go from point A to point B all by themselves, and they'll loiter. And then a human comes in and, does something when it gets there, makes a decision, and then they basically just say, go do that. And it happens. Like,
Yes.
in terms of like, very specialty type things.
Yes.
There could be a whole industry of really expert operators.
Yes.
That can
rescue
do things
operations
where
would be a great
you can't program the thing to understand what the thing is that it's got to do, because you don't even know what it is yet.
Yes.
Right. So like, yes, for repetitive tasks that you know what the environment is and what it's got to do, you can absolutely make that autonomous. But most jobs are not that.
Yes.
Like, the job, maybe I should say that differently. Like, the jobs of the future that humans do are going to be the things that the robot needs help doing.
Yes. Right.
Maybe that's a way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, like, being a robot miner, like mining an area, there are other factors that a human being in that environment will notice about the walls and whether or not they're giving way and that kind of stuff that would go, not just deal with the people inside, the safety of the mine interior itself, but the ground above and making sure it doesn't collapse in on it or whatever. Now, there are all sorts of material physics reasons why you would feel like you could mitigate against that. You're constantly taking readings, and if it's got enough data, it could absolutely do it. But that's one of the areas you might use this is in rescue operations, because you don't know where people are trapped or how they're trapped, and you might have to make a decision about somebody's pinned arm like 127 hours, and am I going to not leave this up to a robot to sever your arm, or am I going to talk you through it because I'm really here, and using it like a bomb disposal robot that has somebody operating it specifically. And I think there are both. And I think when it comes to the
absolutely
fruit picking and that kind of stuff, I would argue, just like having a big thresher, it doesn't have to be a person. It's tedious and it's unnecessary. But there are areas where there are environmentally dangerous things, readings that needed to be taken, observations that need to be made that can't just be done with satellite imagery or a drone flying overhead, that have to, they got to look around a corner, and it's got to know to look around the corner instead of just be told to. And so, it might not understand and fall in, and then you lose another probe and you got to send out another one. So you might have a person operating it in that circumstance and a secondary person watching on its behalf, third person.
Sure.
You have a little secondary drone following your robot around, those kind of things. And those are extra jobs for people who will be masterful at controlling these things, just like cool drone operators, like people who know how to do like the crazy, like drone racing and stuff like that. That is a massive skill, very akin to playing video games, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, totally. It's a skill like every job is a skill. Like, question is, what's the skill, right? Like, if you're an electrician, don't touch the two wires together while you're holding it.
Right. I'm
being facetious, but
yeah.
So do you have a hard stop at 111?
No, I mean, I should get going because I want to go over to CES today. And like I said, today's afternoon show will be later than normal, kids, because I'm going to go over and check this out. I'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow on the radio show, no doubt, as well, what's going on at CES, just because it's such a big part of our lives. And the funny part of being consumer electronics show kind of undersells what it's actually about. Because our lives are so intertwined with electronics and computers and all that stuff today that a lot of it's crucial. I mean, there are medical devices being sold there, and that I wouldn't call those necessarily consumer electronic devices, right? You'll find them in hospitals, but their secondary things is what they'll sell on the open market to people, like an app for your watch, but links up to this big device they sell to hospitals, right? That they've been working on.
And a medical robot would be at a medical show. Like, you wouldn't, I mean, maybe CES has some form of medical stuff, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
Well, I'll show you guys, like, I'm going to take a bunch of video and that kind of stuff and sort through it. Brenda says, I need a robot to shovel my driveway. That is definitely coming.
Yes.
That's definitely a thing.
Yes. It'll be kind of like a robot lawnmower.
Yeah.
And
it won't
somebody
look like
commented
a person
earlier that mapping your yard isn't that hard. It's very hard. You can
It's
have
really
a
hard.
perfect map of something. Like doing the thing is very hard. And
Go look at a LiDAR scan.
I can
Yeah,
tell
from
you
these
from
things.
firsthand experience that I work on robotics in many fashions, and trust me,
Yeah.
it seems easy. Getting up and down an icy driveway with a robot, very difficult.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Every step is a learning curve all its own.
Yes.
But the Snowblower 2000, I'd buy that for $1. So, but to that point, while there's a lot of in the Trump world, over promise and under deliver on a bunch of fronts, or promise everything and deliver nothing, or the wrong thing to somebody, which is abundantly going to happen. In the real world on Earth One, there are a lot of people who are actually trying to find a way to make dangerous jobs safer, dirty jobs cleaner, bigger jobs smaller, and smarter jobs simpler, for lack of a better phrase. Because people, not everybody can have access to all these things. And I look forward to, you and I are kind of bullish in the same way, that the idea that you and I would have, everybody will have a digital assistant and a butler, a robot butler, for the price of a used Toyota available to them in the future. And then therefore, people who can't afford that will get the cast-offs, which will be awesome, but not the newest model, in the same way that, even poor people have cell phones a lot of times now. Like you see homeless people with actual touch smartphones, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Sure. The same thing will be true of robotics. The same thing will be true of, these kind of things. And it will make everybody's life that much better. We'll talk about homeless robots in the future. But, I will say, like, between iRobot, Westworld, the room where the naked robots stand all, bored and sad, and then all the robots that you see there when the battery's dead, or my the Luna when she's Luma when she's sleeping, she's on her little charger, and then you wake her up and she's so excited. Sad.
I'm gonna bash them, but I hate those stupid. Is it Lime scooter? The scooters that you just leave wherever, like in the city. They're just like strewn. You like walk out your door and there's like 2 scooters laying on their sides in your front yard.
Yeah, it's just drug delivery systems.
It's kind of like that. They'll just sort of like stop in place and.
Yeah, right. And there's going to be a bunch of that. There's going to be a bunch of robots you'll see eventually where somebody will get fined because they sent their robot out without enough battery charge. Somebody said right. 15,000. Yeah, right. That's the price now, Upper.
That's the price now. Yeah.
Right now, today, the way they
It'll
are.
be cheaper than that.
It'll be cheaper than that. It's already that. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's nuts that the go-to is, there's a $40,000 version of these crickets, these robot dog things, that does all kinds of stuff, but not that much more. They're like the education model, so they come with a bunch of peripherals and that shit you don't need anyways, that you can't, you could build yourself. But still, like, I think the one they have there is 1,500. The go-to is it's 3,000 if it's completely kitted out with all of its stuff. And then the upright walking humanoid robots, the short ones are whatever, $12,000 or $19,000 depending on whether they've got the education model. And then there's the big tall ones are more expensive because they work in factories.
The price of a robot is probably, because of its makeup, it's going to be a commodity.
Yeah.
Like the robot will be a commodity and the price will be set by the value it creates.
Yes.
So what would you pay for someone to cook your dinner every night? Right.
Mm-hmm.
The price you'd pay for someone to cook your dinner is way more than it's so much more than the robot will actually cost.
Yeah.
So they'll set the price based on the activity or based on the value that it creates.
Right. Or to check on your mom or whatever, like the robot that you park in your mom's house, because instead of putting her in a home, this is way cheaper because it will keep track of her, make sure she takes her medication. If anything goes wrong, it will call for an ambulance that will get there faster than it will at the home, like that kind of stuff. It will matter. And it will, it will be a massive shift.
Right.
So
what sets the price of a cell phone? Like, it's the value it creates. It's,
right.
You have to have it. So right now, a cell phone is basically the price of a laptop. right?
Yeah.
Because it's a laptop.
Francie wants a robot.
Yeah,
I'm
we
telling
all
you.
want one, don't we?
Yeah, we do. They're on their
Once you,
way.
once you see like a good purpose, like you'll want one in a second.
Oh yeah.
Once
Well,
you
like
see one, like,
okay. So
working right.
here's my one area where I'm actually trying to build. You know, you and I've talked about like kind of the value of certain kind of robots, and I built that little dog, and I'm still working on it
Yeah.
because I want to add stuff to it, and I got little screens for it, and I want to 3D print an outer body for it because it looks like it'll slice you up because it's just thin sheet metal, so I need to build other parts for it because it's whatever. Anyways, but one thing I would love to do is build one of those arms that knows where the shit on my desk goes.
Yeah.
And when I'm done at the end of the day,
they call it a picker robot.
yeah, picker,
picking robot.
and you just every pen it sees it puts back in the
plates.
pen holder. Every all the paper it pushes into the nearest stack. All any computer peripheral wires it will like wind up and set to the side, right?
Yeah.
And it can do those things. You could set. We're not that far from that right now. If it's got a regimented space like your desk, which is relatively consistent.
Yeah, there's tons of pick and place robots, and they're called gantry robots. It would have like a grid over the top, and then
Yeah.
inside that box, the arm can basically go like this and drop and grab and pick up.
Yeah. And there's also those like, bent arm ones too that you could do, but it wouldn't have as much range or whatever, but it would be limited in what it could do. But it would, like having one of those on your desk and go, hey, Gary, clean up this mess. And every night it just kind of does whatever you call it, whatever you want. But that I find very neat and really fun. And then then it's just a matter of degree.
Yes, totally.
Right? Now it's got legs or wheels. Now it stays on the first floor or it goes all the floors. Now it can make the bed or put dishes away. Now it can walk the dog. Now it can, right? These are just degrees past a certain point. And the question is like, what is that? I mean, the balance will be what does it take versus what does it give? I happen to think that there's a lot of wasted energy and stress even with people going, Jesus, I got to clean my fucking house. And if you could afford a maid, I think a lot of people who could afford a maid would love one. Not a cleaning person, but a maid. Somebody who comes over and just folds your clothes and puts stuff away like your mom almost. In China, they call it the ayi. You hire ants. They hire an ant to come over, a woman who acts like she's a member of your family and cleans your house. It's a regular thing. Everybody has one. It's like every well-to-do person hires these ayis to come over. If you could have a robot ayi that just walks out of the wall and when you're done for the night while you're sleeping, straightens up. Awesome, right? Now, if you had to hire someone to do that and you'd be like, oh, I hope I'm being nice and I got to tip them and are they okay? And will they be here on time? And because I got to go to this meeting and then this thing. And then do I trust them enough to give them, a key to my house? And do they come and go when they please? And all that stress. Think about all those things. I'm sure everybody in the chat room can come up with 35 other but parts of that.
Did I turn the stove off?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Did she remember to put the stove? Did she turn the stove on again? She's getting a little old, right? Whatever it is. That having, if you could have that without the but, you just would. Yeah, I always feel weird about it. Robin, I know. You know who cleans our house when we have maids, when we have a cleaner coming over, not like a maid service come over?
Before they come.
We do. Summer and I pathologically clean the house before the maid shows up.
I always, my partner, Kristen, I'm always like, you clean for the cleaning lady. Like, don't do that. Stop.
Yes.
She
Summer does that all the time. Like she's like, the cleaners are going to be here. We have to straighten up. Right. I'm like, right. We have to do the dishes because the clean.
Don't you clean? I'm like, nope.
No. That's what I brought.
I'm not going to leave like underwear out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's a limited number of things, that I'll make sure are okay. It's like I used to have this joke. There used to be these vans around LA that said like topless house cleaners or whatever, like or naked house cleaners. Like these women would come over and clean your house in the nude, which was creepy and silly. But there were vans all over the place. And I was like, the weird part is like I would never use a service like that only because the only reason I clean my house is if there's going to be a naked person in it. Like if I was like, if a girl's going to be naked in my place, I will scour the goddamn place because I know she's, all right, Friday might be the night. Let's clean this place up. I can't ever coming into this fucking pigsty. So why would I like hire someone to come over and do the exact thing I fear the most? A nude woman in my apartment when it's a mess, right? It's just stupid. So, but the same thing is true with the cleaners. All right, now, I have to do a little bit of that with the Roomba because there are rooms I don't want to go in, so you set a barrier. Or you move, like I use my hand weights to make sure it doesn't go under certain tables.
Okay.
Before now it's got a barrier
setting
thing.
Boundaries.
Yeah, now the boundaries work way better. But the first gen of it would just bump into shit. It didn't really, or it would learn that way. So I would put little like the 5 or 10 or 15 pound weights around, and I would put them in front of things I didn't want it to run into because it would hit it and back off. Right.
Yeah. So the Roomba used to be where it would literally just, when it hit, then it would literally turn some number of degrees and go the other way. And it was totally random. It had no smarts at all. It didn't it didn't map anything out or anything. It was
now they're pretty good. You can even draw it. Around. You can draw it with your finger and go, this is the boundary. Don't go outside this in the room because it'll find the room first or whatever. So the point I'm trying to make is that imagine the value added to that in your own life. I'm not going to use a robot to babysit my kid, but I am going to trust it if we're going to be overnight, out of town to feed the cat, right? That would be something, right? Imagine all the places you haven't gone, things you haven't done because the pets have to be fed on a schedule, and getting somebody to do it or whatever isn't there. So you have somebody now, and they're completely trustworthy because they blank their brain every night, right? Except for what they're supposed to do. That kind of that shift is coming. I'm not saying, wouldn't it be nice? Won't that be wild? Right. Wouldn't it be crazy? It's happening. There are people, whether people think it is advisable or not, that's coming. And it's coming on such a scale, like we're talking about, of like $16,000 for these fucking walk around robots, that you're going to see like a used one's going to be $8,000 and then $4,000, and it's going to be like, oh, you still got that. What robot do you have? You used to have that crappy blue Chevy Nova robot. Yeah, same crappy blue Chevy Nova, right? That's what's gonna happen. You're gonna have like farms are gonna buy old housekeeping robots and repurpose them for fucking weevil picking and shit like that. I'm just telling you, that's it. It was always gonna happen. Now it's close. It's getting closer at a faster and faster clip. So there's a lot of bullshit. That's the Musk thing. A lot of bullshitters out there. But there's also a lot of real shit happening. So I'm going to run off to CES. I will be here later. Like I said, my afternoon show will be late. I'm gonna jump over and I think I can raid. And hi, Boston Brian. I think I'm going to raid Cliff Schecter's channel. Hold on.
Right.
Cool.
So this is it.
Well,
So
great to see everybody today in the chat, and you always, Hal. Love you very much. And
you too.
Everybody have a great weekend, and let's try. Are you available next week for our earlier in the week meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll do that.
I almost think we should, basically like record that, and if we want to turn it into an audio podcast, we should.
We could.
We totally could. It wouldn't take much. Let's see. Twiff rating. Okay, Cliff's Edge now. I just need his channel thing is all. I gotta find him in here. Sorry, beg your pardon. 1 second. Edge O. Yeah, that's his show, I think. Cliff's Edge O. Is that him? I'm gonna mark this. There you go. Yeah, there he is. Okay, I'm gonna send everybody. We're gonna raid Cliff's show over on Twitch. If you're on Twitch, you'll find yourself starting to bounce over there. I'm gonna let Rob go. Oh, I'm already raiding it. Okay, so CSL did it. Okay, excellent. Okay, great. So we're already doing a raid over there. What's up? So you and I will talk on Tuesday, and then we'll have it again on Friday. And I want to set it up so that you and I can use Gemini, although that is Sexy Liberal weekend, so I think we're flying out that night or the night before or something. So we'll figure out what that is.
I can use Gemini on my computer. Mm-hmm. It's just about whether it hears you or not, but I think it would. So I can do it on my side. Mm-hmm. We could just try this on Tuesday.
Yeah, let's try because I want to try some stuff too, and we can do a test on Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, let's do
Love
that.
it. All right. Be
All right,
well.
there's like somebody shoveling right outside my window, and I'm sure you
Nope.
can hear it. So I
Nope,
keep muting.
not at all. Can't hear it. All good. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. I got to run. I got to get over there because I want to get as much in before it closes and all stuff. Yeah, I got to go, man. This is I'm the nerd gods are calling me.
There you go. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. See you later. Bye. Off we go. All right. Thanks, Rob. And thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for everybody for being here. Thanks, Boston Brian. Love you, dude. Let's talk soon. We need to get you back on the show as well. We should get Boston Brian on the morning show tomorrow, if he's free. Got Cliff Max rate by his price. Oh, nice. There we go. No one leaves. Yeah, well done, CSL. Cool. And you can notice it's dry as a bone in here because everybody left. There's never, we don't get any graphics, any of the emojis when I raid. I'm leaving. Okay, bye, Em. Fine. Be that way. Fine.